Everyone, welcome back to Working Remotely. Today we are working remotely with Nicole France from Constellation Research. Hi, Nicole. How are you?
Hi, Sandy. I'm great. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for being with us today. So, as you know, we're trying to talk to different people from influencers to employees to partners to try to understand what they have been doing to adjust to this new work environment for so many. Now, for you, though, from what I understand, you've been doing this full time for 6 years. Is that right?
That's right. For three different companies now. And it's been a mix from very small companies to very large companies.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about your, home office essential. Let's start with something light and fun. So what are some things you feel like you must have in your office to stay productive?
Well, it's a great question. I think for me, it's a little bit of variety. So I do have my office set up. My office setup has moved around my house. So we've been in this house for about 4.5 years. And I've moved between my stepson's room that he's occasionally in, the breakfast nook, and also the front entry hall. I settled on the front entry hall because it's got a great view of Avalon Harbor, which unfortunately I can't share with you right now. It doesn't look as good on camera, by the way, because we have some power lines running across it that your mind edits out beautifully, but the camera really does not.
Oh.
So with that said, although I do spend a lot of time in my desk in the front entry hall, I actually move around different places in the house. So sometimes I'll work at the dining table, sometimes I'll sit on the sofa. And right now I'm actually in the back room of the house looking out over the backyard.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So for those of you who don't know, Nicole lives in Catalina, a place that I visited since I was a kid. Absolutely gorgeous. I can only imagine, when you have that backdrop, the type of inspiration that comes to, your writing and your work on a daily basis. I'm jealous. For me, I have to put one of those fake backgrounds, on just to have that type of view. But no, that's wonderful.
The background here might not be that great, but the view I see out the window is awesome.
That's awesome. Well, that's good. That's great. So, as an analyst, I can only imagine that your schedule has changed so much. So with all these event cancellations, what have you guys been doing to try to stay engaged, with partners, with clients, and what are some of the suggestions you have too for others who are in the same boat, trying to keep up that level of engagement?
Yeah, it's challenging. I mean, and actually, a few of us were talking about this just the other day with a sort of online happy hour that we're planning for later in the week. Because even as analysts, most of us, even who work in the same company, but beyond that, there's a circle of all of us who are very friendly. I mean, we're really friends outside of work, with the advantage that we get to see each other when we go to all of these events. Mm-hmm. So it's one of the things that's been really strange about everything getting canceled and my sort of 6 back-to-back weeks of business travel coming to a screeching halt, is that I don't get to see the people that I really enjoy spending time with and that I normally get to see this time of year pretty frequently.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real parallel if you're used to working in an office too, right? Because you see these people and, they have a real influence over your frame of mind, how you're feeling. And that's something that is a big adjustment. In terms of the mechanisms, certainly we're seeing a whole lot of virtual events all of a sudden. So one that I've got tomorrow is Zendesk Relater. It was supposed to be Zendesk Relate, but it got canceled. So I think that's a clever name, by the way. But a whole lot of these different companies that have had in-person events that have had to switch. Some of those virtual events have even gotten canceled because things are so fast-moving that the way they were going to present them had to change too. So I realize I'm naming a whole bunch of other companies, but Oracle was supposed to happen tomorrow. That one got canceled too as a virtual event. So it's a little crazy. I think what I'm seeing is a combination of stuff that's scheduled and organized and a whole lot of impromptu calls. And I think actually those impromptu calls and conversations are actually a really, really important way of staying connected to customers, certainly, but also to colleagues and some of my professional friends.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to throw a funny question in there. Do you feel like video adds a new dimension to it? I mean, what's your thought on that? Because I feel like, for a lot of people that I'm hearing from, it's like, whereas they've always been sort of video shy, are finding themselves in this position. They're longing for that, the connection. Like I'm seeing you make a, nod and smiling, and you're seeing me nod and smile. There's a certain connection there. So how do you feel about, the video element?
I think video absolutely adds a really important dimension. It gets hard when you've got a whole lot of people on one call, but especially when you've got a smaller number, if it's 2 or, maybe up to 5 or 6, it's actually really kind of nice. Here's an interesting observation. When I was at Cisco, a big company that's got a whole lot of people who often work in offices, essentially my entire team that I worked in was remote. So there were some people who went to offices. There were some people who were near and could go to offices, but essentially no 2 people were actually in the same location. So we all, in a sense, were virtual, and it really created a level playing field. And that's one of the things that has kind of happened all of a sudden by accident for all of us. And the nice thing about that is that if you are on video and everybody else is too, and also in these particular circumstances, we are all facing the same challenges, right? This is not normal. It's not like everyone's got their perfect home office set up that's free from disruption and distraction. I mean, we're all dealing with all kinds of things that are totally not normal and that are going kind of crazy, right? All at the same time. Whether it's kids or pets or other halves or whatever it might be, roommates, it's definitely not normal operating conditions. And in a sense, the advantage of that is that we're all in it together. So there's, I think, a lower bar to sharing video because we all know it's not going to be perfect. But what I do know from working in a virtual team before was we also didn't have that kind of disparity of having a bunch of people sitting in a conference room and then 1 or 2 people who were remote. And I think that made it a lot easier on one hand, again, level playing field. But also we had a rule among our team that it was come as you are. So nobody's going to be criticizing what you look like or what your background is. I mean, occasionally there was a little good-natured teasing, of course, but it really does make a difference because so much of what we interpret is really nonverbal, right? Can you tell if someone's paying attention? How are they responding to what you're saying? What does their facial expression tell you?
Oh, absolutely.
And all of those things are actually really important. And although it's not perfect in video, it is actually a hell of a lot better than not having that option to see who you're talking to and meeting with.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. As long as, hey, from the screen up, we look presentable. That's all that matters, right? You have no idea what I'm wearing down there, so.
You can't see my jeans and Uggs right now.
Yeah, well, I got fuzzy slippers and, comfy pants. Let's put it that way. So, yeah. So, we've both been in tech, in different roles for some time. But what about those industries where, working virtually is a completely novel concept? And, I've been hearing that some people are finding themselves isolated, emotional, scared by the new technology ramp up, suddenly knowing knowing how to start a meeting and how to get a webcam. I mean, what are some advice you have for those guys?
I think the first thing is be kind to yourself. There is actually an amusing amount of detail that you have to figure out when you start working from home, and it takes a little bit of time. It's not something you're going to get right from the first instance, especially under duress, right? So just be kind with yourself and be patient because it is going to take a little while to figure stuff out. The other thing is a lot of it is kind of personal and individual. It's sort of like how you have your desk set up in the office. Everybody's got their own preferences, what the height of the chair is or how you have the armrests adjusted or what you have sitting on your desk, right? These are all the equivalent things that you need to figure out when you start working from home. What is the right camera placement? Do you want to use the camera that's on your computer? Do you want to buy a separate one? All of these things are really sort of small details, but they all add up and they contribute to that work environment. I sort of touched on before, and I think the other really big thing for me is be conscious that one of the biggest changes that you have to address when you start working from home is that you have to be much more conscious of your own frame of mind and your sort of mental mood or I guess mental context. I don't know how to describe it, but really your frame of mind. when you go to the office, you're surrounded by other people. There's activity, there are things happening, there's an energy there. And, generally it's the kind of energy that is productive and that inspires you to do good work. It's a lot harder to get that at home when you really have to create it for yourself. And that's particularly hard when you have a whole lot of things going on that might not really be particularly conducive to actually being in that frame of mind. So be thoughtful, but again, be patient, because this is not normal. This is not normal working from home conditions for anybody, even those of us who have been doing it for a long time. So do what you need to do to get yourself in a better mindset in order to be productive. And maybe have lower expectations for how productive you're really going to be right now. I think honestly, most employers are, most bosses are going through the same things that their employees are too. So everybody's trying to tackle this simultaneously.
So let's talk about the Constellation Crew. So you guys are all dispersed. How do you, but then like you said, you guys sometimes see each other at the same conferences. So how are you guys dealing with this? How are you trying to, connect? I know that you guys have the platforms to, work across teams, but, what's that something more that you guys now are doing too to stay connected?
Well, it's interesting because we do effectively have conversations through a lot of different kinds of channels. We have chat, and we have various chat threads. Most of us are on Twitter pretty frequently as well. So that becomes another sort of parallel track of conversations. We do have some team calls, and a lot of us are talking to each other either individually or with a small group of us together. So I would say there's a real mix, and I think a lot of it is on one hand just kind of personal stuff like checking in to see how everyone is doing or how others are doing, and some of it is more intentional. So it's really driven by a particular project or a particular issue that we need to work through. So there's a reason for us to get together and have a conversation.
Got it. Cool. Well, so we're down to a couple more questions. So what is a must-have or must-do for you to stay focused at home?
For me, a lot of it comes down to the environment around me. And I laugh a little bit because I was thinking about this at the end of last week. It kind of reminds me when I had big papers due and like my undergraduate dissertation when I was in college. My apartment was never as clean as it was when I had some major project that I had to do. And I think that actually is really true for me now, too. It's not like I'm necessarily getting distracted by doing housework, but I definitely feel the need to create a space and an environment that is organized and is tidy, and that really helps to give me the mental structure that I need. It almost liberates my mind to be free to focus on the work stuff that I really need to concentrate on.
Cool. That's good. So last before we let you go, what's an adjective you would use to describe your remote work environment?
A construction project. No, it is interesting because despite my last statement, we live in an old house that we are very, very slowly renovating. So almost literally my entire house is a construction site. So I think that might be why having an orderly space becomes so much more important to me. But if I were to actually come back and put it into one word, it would be changing.
Changing. I like that. Very good. Cool. Well, Nicole, thanks for giving us your tips, and thank you for working remotely with us today. We'll talk to you again very soon.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Sandy.
Thank you.